Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Leanne McAdoo to talk about the other big news from this weekend, the Democrat debate.
Right, that's right. Well, you know, it's a lot of Democratic deja vu all over again. Of course, they rolled out with their faulty statistics on 90 people a day are killed by gun violence in our country, which, you know, of course, those statistics are off.
All the cliches they repeat every time they get together, every time they speak.
And more calls because, you know, this debate was held in Michigan. So, of course, they used the crisis in Kalamazoo to once again call for gun control. But they went even further this time. Take a look at this clip.
But as I understand what your question is, and you know, you're not the only person whose heart was broken. I was there in the Senate when we learned about this killing. It is almost unspeakable to talk about some lunatic walking into a room. I mean, it is hard to even talk about. We all feel that way. But if, as I understand it, Anderson, and maybe I'm wrong, what you're really talking about is people saying, let's end gun manufacturing in America. That's the implications of that.
We're going to move on.
So actually now admitting that the be-all, end-all of this is to end gun manufacturing here in America.
And doing it with all the cliches that they all use, and of course, it's sheer demagoguery, talking about children in schools, gun-free zones where nobody's allowed to protect them, even the teachers are not allowed to protect them. And again, you know, automatic weapons and so forth and so on. But let's talk about what brought this all up. And of course, this was the father of a 14-year-old who was shot in Kalamazoo by the Uber driver. Now, understand that what's going on here. The liberal press is showing this as saying, we need to do something to stop the gun manufacturers. Well, this was an Uber driver, okay? And nobody is saying that Uber needs to be taken down because he shot them while he was at work. Nobody is saying that the car manufacturer that he was riding around in needs to be charged. Only the gun manufacturer that he was using needs to be charged. And I have to ask, would they say that Uber or the car company were responsible if instead of shooting people, he had run them down? This is the issue, and this is what Bernie Sanders was saying. Bernie Sanders was absolutely right on this issue. People need to listen. Democrats, listen to Bernie on this issue. What he's saying is, if you haven't done anything criminal, you shouldn't be liable. But Hillary Clinton is so desperate to shut down the Second Amendment, to shut down gun ownership, to shut down gun manufacturing, as Bernie Sanders pointed out, that she will divorce any reason whatsoever from this and go after people when they don't have any negligence. And understand, I've heard people say, Leanne, that, oh, well, the cars are set up for driving people around and guns are set up to kill people. No, guns are there to defend people. Right. And when they're used by mass shooters, they are misused just as much as if it was a car running down a crowd of people. That's a misuse of the car. That's not what the car was intended for. The guns are intended to protect people. They are a deterrent and they are a defensive mechanism. When they are used offensively, that's a crime. That's a crime. And if you're not part of that, then you don't have any liability in that crime. Right, and this is just going to set up a slippery slope if Clinton has her way. And also, it is inaccurate, this claim that the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act of 2005 removes accountability from the makers and sellers of guns. There are actually at least 6 exceptions where civil lawsuits can still be filed. And this is where, you know, they're being negligent. So there are still some protections. And as Sanders pointed out, ultimately, what you're saying is you want to end gun manufacturing here in America. That law was there to clarify that people like Hillary Clinton cannot hold you liable when you're not liable for a crime. Right. Yeah, when you haven't done anything wrong. And so, of course, then she wanted to backtrack and say how wonderful everything was during her husband's presidency because, yeah, he did some bad things there with his pipeline to prison laws, but, you know, the economy was so great. Well, Bernie Sanders was also correct in calling her out on saying, well, yeah, you know, some things were great, but some things were not great. Let's talk about these trade deals. So we've got a clip of that as well.
Let me tell my story, you tell yours. I will. Your story is for voting for every disastrous trade agreement and voting for corporate America. Did I vote against the Wall Street bailout? When billionaires on Wall Street destroyed this economy, they went to Congress and they said, oh, please, we'll be good boys, bail us out. You know what I said? I said, let the billionaires themselves bail out Wall Street. Shouldn't be the middle class of this country. Okay.
here again, Sanders is absolutely right about these trade deals being detrimental to the middle class, the working class here in America. And we're going to be dealing with this all over again to a much larger degree with the TPP.
It's amazing to see how Clinton spun this, okay? She is irreversibly joined at the hip with Wall Street and the big bankers,
right?
Just like Ted Cruz is. So what she tries to do is to take her support of the TARP program, of the banker bailout, and say, oh, this was about a bailout of the auto industry. That's not true.
No.
That was a very small part of it. But even if that were true, how has that worked out? Well, we've seen that Italy got Chrysler for a sweetheart deal, and I guess they should say grazie, okay? I don't know what the word for thank you is in Chinese, but they should say thank you as well. Because when GM survived with their bailouts, what'd they do with the money that they saved with that? They opened up more factories in China. They moved more jobs overseas. And that's what these people understand. And of course, the day after the contentious GOP debate on Thursday, Donald Trump had, on that Friday morning following it, he had a big rally in Michigan talking to auto workers. And as I pointed out in the previous segment, that is the key. He's got a lot of people there in that area. I think he's going to do very well in Michigan because he's talking to the people who have lost their jobs. That's why you're seeing the Democrats moving in droves from the Democrat Party to vote for Donald Trump because they understand that this economy has been eviscerated. And nowhere do we see that more so than in Michigan. And yet Hillary Clinton tries to spin that around and say, well, I did the banker bailout to save automobile jobs. It's like, well, you didn't do a very good job of it then.
One little line in the second to last paragraph, nobody at the time had any idea what money was even going to go to the auto industry. It was to bail out Wall Street, period. And she knows that. Sanders called her out on it, that it was to bail out her friends.
Which really brings us to the top story on Drudge this morning. This was a Reuters story, and the headline on Drudge was, Trump shakes the world order. That would be the new world order. And of course, we've already seen how China and Mexico are furious at Donald Trump because he wants to stand up for what is in the best interest of American workers. And we've got the former president of Mexico talking trash about Donald Trump. He needs to understand, and we need to understand, that we had a trade deficit just last year of $58 billion with Mexico. And as Donald Trump points out, they're essentially, Mexico is the new China. That's what he told the automobile workers, and it's true. The jobs are moving to China, but we have these foreign diplomats who think that not only do they get to write the trade rules in secret, okay, not only do the globalists get to write the trade rules and not our Congress, but now the foreign leaders, these globalist leaders who want open borders, who want to export our jobs and import workers into our country, those same people decided that they should have a say in our election.
Right.
Well, we need to tell them that they don't have a say in our election. I could care less what Burka Merkel wants for our country. She is destroying her own country in Germany. She wants to do the same thing here. That's what's behind all this, as well as the people that we see that are listed in this article out of India and so forth. That's
India, South Korea, Japan, Mexico. So, of course, these are all places that want the U.S. to stay in line with all of these trade agreements that they're benefiting from heavily, while American workers are losing their jobs, and they're going to lose even more due to trade with these TPP countries.
And not only the trade issue, not only just the economic issue, but also that we should shoulder the burden of their defense. Look at these countries, South Korea, Japan, Mexico, India, okay? It's not only the economic issues, but it's also us paying for their defense. And if you want to know who's genuine on this issue, this is the key issue to me when I look at the presidential election, because on all the civil liberties issues, unfortunately, there's no difference between any of the Republican candidates or Democrats. They are against us on civil liberties. If you haven't noticed that yet, you're not paying attention. But on the issue of trade and what is good for our country, we need to understand who is the insider, who is the outsider. That's the big question in the Republican Party race. Is Cruz the outsider or is Donald Trump? Well, if you look at who the establishment, who the globalists are opposing, who they are desperate to take down, there can be no doubt about it that the outsider is not Ted Cruz, that they're not really worried about, that they're funding through Goldman Sachs, who is one of the largest collectors of big money donations on Wall Street. No, the person that they're trying to take down is Donald Trump, because he's been talking about this for 35 years. 35
years. And Hillary Clinton and Sanders, they don't have any actual solutions. She says, oh, well, I'm going to make those corporations pay an exit tax if they want to leave the country. And Sanders came along and said that, you know, he was going to make them bring the jobs back. And of course,
sounds
make
exactly
them pay that
like
minimum
the
wage.
Republican Party, don't they? Absolutely.
No
Just
solution.
generalities. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Thousands of years ago, there was a basic form of chivalry. Our ancestors would hear the drums of war, giving the warriors of the tribe a chance to organize and prepare a defense. 60 years ago, when foreign air forces were approaching filled with bombs, they had drums of their own, air raid sirens. But in the 21st century, there are silent weapons for quiet war. Pathogens added to the food and water, and to the lining of plastics that destroy our vitality, turn off our hormones, and accelerate our journey towards death. I personally counter this onslaught with Anthroplex. Anthroplex is designed with known organic concentrated herbs to create the basic foundation to normal metabolic activity inside the human body. Discover why Anthroplex is turning so many heads today. It's time for us to take our bodies back into our own hands, and it starts at InfoWarsLife.com with Anthroplex.